Good afternoon. My name is Sergeant Mitchell. Today we'll be talking about leader development in our oral brief. The reason we're speaking about leader development today in our oral brief is because we want to reference all of the competencies as well as the building blocks that leader development comprises that make true leaders for the Army and for the future Army. Leader development. Leader development is defined as a deliberate, continuous, sequential, and progressive process founded in Army values. Breaking that down, in other words, leader development is the process the Army uses to develop leaders that will continuously perform above the standard. Leader development is both a self-initiated process as well as a team-maintained effort. Breaking that down as well, without the drive to better as a leader, those behind you to develop you and hold you accountable, you will ultimately have no success with leader development. Requires constant and consistent feedback. Feedback is something we will be referencing throughout today's oral briefing, because the importance of feedback within any type of development is crucial. Leader development. Leader development has three training domains: institutional training domain, operational training domain, as well as the self-development training domain. Each domain is mutually supportive, complementary, as well as maintains continuity within itself. The first training domain today that we are going to speak about is the institutional training domain. The institutional training domain refers to Army courses as well as schools. Each school and course within the institutional training domain is utilized to not only develop soldiers in Department of the Army civilians educationally wise, but also application competency wise as well. Example of these schools are Pathfinder School, Ranger School, Supply Chain Management School, as well as hazmat training, and of course all of your leadership courses, BLC, ALC, SLC, MLC, and the Sergeant's Major Academy. Goals of this training domain is to institutionally focus training to develop soldiers and Department of the Army civilians. The next training domain that we will be referring to today is the operational training domain. The operational training domain utilizes leader-scheduled activities as well as trainings. These activities and trainings allow developing leaders to learn through experience. Experience is huge in the operational training domain because this is one of the few training domains where you get hands-on application with everything that you're going through. For soldiers, this is the largest amount of leader development acquired inside the domain. With that being said, the reason being is because a lot of your trainings and scheduled activities that you will be going through are ranges, weapon ranges, as well as your warrior task and drills, as well as your deployment. Any type of deployment situation, of course, is going to give you large amounts of leader development because that is a stressful environment. This is where leaders apply education obtained in the institutional domain. This goes back to one of our first few slides that talks about everything being complementary and mutual. Each training domain basically builds off of the other because every individual encompasses the first training domain beforehand to be effective in the next training domain. Feedback, once again, as we referenced, is in high regard and develops leaders in this domain. Oops, looks like we skipped one. The self-development training domain. Inside the self-development training domain is planned and goal-oriented learning. This reinforces your self-awareness as well as widens and strengthens your knowledge base. This domain depends upon engaging in meaningful resources. Resources are huge inside of the self-development training domain because without the resources to engage the leader and force them to move forward and go for more knowledge, be hungry for that knowledge, they won't be successful inside of the training domain. This also encourages leaders to take advantage of opportunities allotted to refine their intellect as well as grow their knowledge base. Intellect refinement would be in reference to anything within inside of your scope of practice, anything inside of your MOS. Knowledge base growth and knowledge growth as a whole is going to be anything outside of your normal day-to-day practices and your MOS. This makes the self-development training domain the most robust component of the professional development model. Next, we'll be talking about self-development again, but we will not be referencing the self-development training model. We'll be talking about self-development as a whole in the grand scale. The three types are structured, guided, and personal. Moving on to structured self-development, this references all your classroom and on-the-job training. So this will be your initial training, your basic combat training, your AIT, anything that's structured as far as you must go through this and complete these different types of tasks to complete the course. Next, moving on to guided self-development. This refers to the optional but recommended trainings that the Army provides for you as a leader to be successful in the future. Examples of this will be your correspondence courses, anything outside of your specialty, any type of financial class that you would like to take so that you can be fiscal and financially prepared for the future, as well as Arbinger training. Most of us are not necessarily familiar with Arbinger training because it is normally a leadership type of training, but it teaches leadership how to basically connect and conversate with other types of groups that may not be able to conversate in their same type of language or have their same priorities. Lastly, we're talking about personal self-development, which is your self-initiated learning. Personal self-development, as it stipulates, is strictly about you. This states the importance of what, how, and when. When we're referencing what, how, and when, we're referencing what goals that are you looking to complete, how you plan on completing these goals. For example, do you plan on going to college so that you can get your bachelor's degree and then move on to get your master's degree in a field of your choice? And when? How long this college course is going to take, how long it'll take you to get this bachelor's degree or your master's degree. Personal self-development requires the use of institutions for further development. Although this is not the institutional training domain, it is institutions as a whole that are required in order for you to be able to develop personally. So again, talking about that mutual bond, talking about being one whole ideal, one whole model. Examples of this, as we previously stated, are your degree programs, national or state credentialing, as well as your skill programs. We'll be talking about the Army Leadership Requirement now, also known as the RM model. We all are familiar with the Leadership Requirement model. I believe sometimes it's in my sleep. This standard set of leader attributes and core leader competencies are what every effective leader must possess to continue to develop as well as maintain being an effective leader. Historically used as a guideline to further development of current and future leaders, as we can see up here on the screen, it talks about our attributes of character, presence, and intellect, as well as our competencies as the leads develops and achieves. As shown in the competency side, this is also used to evaluate soldiers that may not be in a leadership role, but do show leadership promise to be furthered so that it can be in leadership role later down the road. Here are our regulations, FMs, and doctrine publications that we reference as far as Army leadership and the leader development model. Army Regulation 350-1, your Field Manual 6-22, as well as your ADP or Army Doctrine Publication 6-22. In conclusion, today we define leader development. We talked about the three training domains. We also talked about the three types within self-development as the grand scheme of the training domains of self-development. We talked about the leadership requirement model in brief. And we also viewed the regulation field manual as well as the publication that are contained with the Army Leader Development model. Do we have any questions today about today's oral briefing?
Well, no questions.
No questions? Well, I would really like to put out my appreciation to everyone who came out to listen to my oral briefing today. I thank you that everyone was able to understand the points that I was putting across and that I did not incite any questions in anyone's mind. If nothing further, please have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.